Welcome to Inside the Skev, and I'm your host, Aaron Maslyansky. Today we're sitting down here with Shana Erenberg, who runs the Libenu organization here in Skokie. And Libenu works with young adults and children with mental and physical challenges, and they do some great work here in the community. And I thought it'd be great to bring Shana on and to talk about it. So thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's really my pleasure. And, you know, you run the organization. So what are some of the things that you do to run this organization here?
So I'm the founder and the executive director of Libenu, and this is our 10th year. We're celebrating our 10th anniversary of 10 years of service to the community. We provide housing for Jewish adults with developmental disabilities, and we partner with other organizations to do meaningful day programming, vocational training. We have a lot of social and recreational programs that we also have for our young men and women so that they have a really full, rich life as included members of the community. And we have an after-school program that's called LAVE that provides respite for families who have younger children so that they can get a break in their day.
Is that at a location, or do people come to the home of where these people are located?
So it's at a location. It's Monday through Thursdays from 4 o'clock to 7 p.m. Mondays is our teen day. We've got 2 teen groups that come on Monday, and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we've got children between the ages of 5 and really 14. And they're dropped off after school. Our teens go out into the community. They'll go bowling, they'll go shopping, they cook dinner, a lot of different activities that are appropriate for them. Our younger kids will have games and activities all centering around Jewish holidays, Jewish themes. For many of our children that are in the program, we have what we call homework time. So I work with
Does anybody like that?
Actually, they love it.
They do. You must be doing something right.
It's not really homework. I train our staff to work with our clients on individual academic goals so that it's not just a time that we're providing babysitting, but they're getting academic challenges while they're there. So some of the young folks are working on reading, and some are working on math, and some are working on writing their name, depending on what their abilities are. They have a wonderful, warm, delicious, kosher dinner, and they go home ready for bed so that parents can just breathe for a few hours. It's an important program, and we were approached, we're in our 3rd year. We were approached by some parents in the community that said, my child comes home from school at 1 or 2 o'clock, and I can't do anything else. I can't have dinner with my other kids. I can't go to the grocery store. I can't do homework with my other children. I can't do anything because this child takes 150% of my attention. Mm-hmm. And so we felt that, one option was to send people into the homes, but really to have the children come out, so that they have activities to do, and they're out of the house. I'll tell you a great story. This last summer, I'm getting a pedicure, and I'm sitting in the chair, and I look over, and sitting next to me is one of the moms from our teen program. Yeah. And she's getting a pedicure, and she's drinking an iced coffee, and she's reading a magazine, and she said to me, "You don't know what this hour means to me." She goes, "I'm only here because my son is in your program right now." She says, "I no other time for myself ever." So just to have that 1 hour that, many of us just take for granted that we can run in here, do this, they can't. And now they have a break, and it's critically important.
It is. It's critically important for their mental health. It's critically important for their children to have something else to be able to do to focus their energy with trained professionals. It's beautiful.
It's been a wonderful program, and we collect data on everything that we do. And what the information that's coming back to us is that parents are reporting, the vast majority of parents are reporting a very significant decrease in the stress that they feel every day. They're feeling more of a connectedness to the community and to other people, less isolation. So even the feedback that we're getting from parents, it's beyond just a fun time for these kids in the afternoon to have something to do that's more meaningful. It's really making a difference.
Why did you start Libenu?
Oh, great question. So I've been in this field a really long time, in the education and special education fields, particularly in the Jewish community. And one of the founders of Keshet, I ran the Sunday school for 20 years, and I somewhat retired, I guess you would call it. I stepped back about 15 years ago. I felt I just needed more time for myself. It had been 20 years.
It's a long time.
Long time. And my kids moved to Seattle, and I wanted to have time to go visit them on the weekends.
Yeah.
So, and I always assumed somebody would do something about housing, right? And at the time, I was the chairman of the International Consortium of Jewish Special Educators, and every year we'd have a conference in a different city, and every year we'd visit the programs that were there, and all of these smaller communities had housing. Phoenix and Cleveland and Detroit, and certainly communities that were smaller than Chicago. And then I would come back here and we didn't have anything.
And you're saying housing for people with physical and mental disabilities.
With developmental disabilities.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty wide range, cognitive impairment, physical disabilities, autism. It's a big population.
Sure.
And people were leaving our community. And I was watching, and every year I would come back and I would feel frustrated waiting for someone, someplace, some organization to step up to the plate and do this, and it just wasn't getting done. And part of the reason it wasn't getting done is because Illinois is so difficult in terms of accessing funding for this type of a project. Illinois is last in the entire country in terms of funding services for adults with disabilities in general. So, we had at the time, Migdal Oz was one home that was in the community. It was completely full, and there was no interest or appetite from any organization to try to start something like this. And then I sat down with a very close friend, and over a cup of coffee, he said to me, "There's nothing here for my son, and we've bought a house in New York, and we're leaving." And that was like just the straw that broke the camel's back. So I said, we're done having this conversation. I picked up a phone and I called a few of my colleagues in Phoenix and Washington, D.C., and I said, just walk me through this, right? What do we need to do to get it started here? So after I got a lot of, you're crazy, why are you doing this? Illinois is so difficult.
Really? People would say that to you?
Oh, they still do.
What?
It's okay. So I started to investigate how we would do this over here. And I approached Deborah and Ira Silverstein, and Deborah is my co-founder of Libenu. And actually I said, Ira, you have to do something about this. And he said, well, why don't we do something about this together? And so we started to explore what needed to be done. I know when I tell the story, it sounds like it was pretty simple, but it was a lot of complicated work. I went downstate and became licensed to do this in this area. And I have a lot of experience in disabilities in this field, and I've been at it a really long time, but residential is a whole new ballgame, right?
There's a lot of regulations that go in with it.
A lot of regulations, a lot of funding. You're working with the Department of Human Services. You're working with different agencies. So I went down to, I think it was in Joliet, went through the training, came back here and realized at the time we needed to partner with an agency because it's just
It's daunting.
It is. And at the time I was working full-time elsewhere, and everybody was busy with their lives and their jobs. So we started interviewing agencies, and we went to different agencies, and for the most part, people patted us on the head and wished us the very best of luck.
They didn't want to get into it.
Right. And really, they were very kind about it. They just wished us the best of luck. And then actually we had a meeting with Sister Rosemary from Misericordia, and she was so open and so helpful, and basically she said, here's the blueprint, here's how you do it, these are the steps you need to do, this is what you need to think about, here's how you plan this, here's how you go about trying to access funding, here are the people. So she was incredibly helpful, and then we started interviewing service agencies because we just ourselves didn't have the capacity to
Right. You
do
need
this.
somebody to manage and help do this.
Right. And then we met Carl Amell from Clearbrook, who was just a godsend to us. So really, and I kind of, I always say this offhand, but really God's hand was in this every step of the way because people we needed to meet when we needed to meet them were suddenly there. Coincidences, and I'll tell you a story when we piled everybody in the car and went down to Springfield to lobby for this. I'll tell you that story in a second. But when we met with Carl, who at the time was the executive director of Clearbrook, and Clearbrook is our current service provider, and they are the largest provider of residential services in the state. And everybody else, when we went to them and said, excuse me, we'd like to set up a kosher home, right? There are homes out there that are not Jewish, that are not kosher, and our homes are open to everybody, Jewish, non-Jewish. We currently have Jewish clients, but anybody can live there. But we wanted to kind of set up what we felt was universal design, right? So that if someone needs to keep kosher, they can't live anywhere else. If someone doesn't need to keep kosher, they can certainly live in a kosher home. There's no difference for it. So Carl was the first one who said, "You want to have a kosher home? We could do that." Right? Libenu wants to have oversight in how things are run, and he said we could do that. So he was so open, and he continues to be involved in our organization today. But he really helped us get off the ground, and we've had this wonderful 10-year partnership with Clearbrook that's been fantastic. So, so as we were getting started, we got a group of parents together. I think they were just exhausted, and if you think about what the impact on your life is, excuse me, of raising a child with a disability. And now that child is 25, and they're no longer in school. They're no longer funded through IDEA funding from school. And they have fallen into what I call the abyss of adult services or lack of adult services. I think these parents were just exhausted. I didn't think they believed we'd ever be able to get anything off the ground. And we got them together and we said, listen, this is what we want to do. We want your child to be part of this. And they all said, well, that would be really nice. We're not going to hold our breath.
Sure.
So we put everybody in cars and we decide we're going down to Springfield and we're going to lobby for what we need because, again, there's anywhere between 20 and 30,000 individuals with adults with disabilities on the PUNS list in Illinois. PUNS is the prioritization of urgent need, and you have to be pulled from that list in order to get state funding, which provides part but not all of what the costs are. And we felt the best way to do this was to go down there and to lobby.
Yeah.
So, at the time, Ira was the state senator. He set it up for us. We go down in the car. We've got a lot of our folks with us. We've got their parents with us. We walk into the governor's office, and the young man who meets us, who was in charge at the time of the legal department there, is someone that my daughter went to the academy with. Really? Yeah. So every step of the way, things happened beyond coincidence. It was. We look at it as God's hand in this. So we were able miraculously to secure, it's called SILA funding. SILA is Community Integrated Living Arrangement. We were able to secure this funding for our first 8 residents. We needed to have a home for them to move into, and we had purchased our first home on Mozart, but we had no money to fix it up, and it was kind of falling into the ground.
Yeah.
And again, we needed to have a house and a home that one of the members of our board had been looking at. That was a foreclosure in Skokie, been looking at it for over a year and a half trying to get it. 2 months before we need a house, the bank calls and says, "Do you want it?"
Wow.
And there were enough bedrooms for our men, and we said, well, yeah, we'll take it. So within 2 months, we were able to fix it up and get our guys in and open up our doors.
Right, and you need to have it up to a certain standard in order to meet state's requirements too, right?
Right. And for us, now the home we have on Mozart, we pretty much renovated from the ground up. So that home is fully ADA compliant. We put an elevator in the home.
Wow.
Actually, the parents were the ones that insisted on it because we had 2 young men that were moving in there, neither of which could take the stairs. And they said, if the home's going to be inclusive and open, it has to be inclusive and open to everybody. Let's raise extra money and put an elevator in. But everything about that home, and you should come visit, everything is ADA. We really thought about every little thing to make it ADA compatible, even to the type of light switches that we have that you don't need a lot of motor control to turn on and off. The faucets that we have for the sink, you can turn on and off just by pushing your hand against it. It's not an electric faucet, but you don't have to turn anything.
With Jewish, law.
Correct. But they're just, everything, the width of the hallways so that wheelchairs can get down. We have one bathroom that we built both in our Mozart and our Tui homes, where the shower is just on a gentle ramp so that somebody who is in a wheelchair, and the shower door can open either way and it's wide, so someone who is in a wheelchair can actually get themselves in and out of the shower without having to have assistance. So we really wanted to think about what is life like on a daily basis for someone with a disability, and what kind of appliances and fixtures and technology could we use to foster their independence. So,
and where were people living before you started opening these homes? If they were inside the SCEV, or in West Rogers Park, Skokie, Evanston, Lincolnwood area, if they have strict kosher standards, were they living at home with their parents?
They were living at home with their parents, and for the most part, some of them were in programs during the day. And again, the programs end early, and then you're home, and they're sitting on the couch and they're watching TV. Yeah. Some of them were not in programs at all, so they were just home with their parents. And, as parents were aging, that fear that parents have, what's going to happen to my child when I'm not here?
Right.
And we hear parents that said to us, before Libenu, we were afraid to die because who's going to who's going to take my child? Who's going to care for my child? Who's going to make sure that, that they're dressed in the morning and they have something to do and they're part of the community, and everybody wants their kids to grow up and have friends and be active and work and be out there and have a meaningful life. And it just wasn't happening. So, I think our original intent was to create housing, and what we've really done is created life. And it's been nothing short of miraculous. It's been wonderful. And now our parents are aging, and we have a lot of parents that have had health concerns and different different things that come along as you age, and we've got their back. And we had a parent. I'll give you an example. We have a young man who lives in our Mozart home who is just amazing and wonderful, and he's an artist, and he's just the happiest, most lovely young man. And his mother had a massive stroke, and she's a young woman driving, had a massive stroke.
Oh my God.
And when we got that call, we're all worried and everything else, and thank God she's doing very, very well. But my first comment was, you don't have to worry about your son, we've got this.
Yeah.
Right? So the one thing that they didn't have to be concerned about was, who's going to be with him at home when she is in the hospital, and then she has this long recovery, and her husband needs to be there for her, and the other kids are grown, so
talk about a respite.
Yeah. And we get emails from parents that just say, you saved our lives. This saved our lives. So it's a wonderful thing. It's just been a really wonderful journey. And
did you ever think you'd be doing something like this in your retirement?
Oh, no. Well, I didn't exactly retire fully, right?
No, not at all.
No. And at the time, I was still the chairman of the Department of Education at Hebrew Theological College and a professor, where now I hold that title as emeritus. And I still have my private practice. I do diagnostic testing and remediation for kids and adults with disabilities. But I thought it would get a little quieter, but it didn't. No. But it's all right. It's been a great journey. We've met wonderful people. I'll tell you, one of the most interesting thing I think that's happened that's really kind of pushed Libenu into a more national and international spotlight gosh, I don't remember what year it was, but we had when we moved into our Mozart home, and then we opened up our first women's home, which was a first in, anywhere in the Midwest. We had a woman who wrote an article about us that ended up on the front page of the Tribune.
Wow.
And from the time that was published, we have been having calls and visitors from all over the world. And we had someone that came in from Hawaii to see what we were doing. I travel all over and speak to different communities. We do a lot of educational programming, consultations. And I think that was a surprise for me because I thought, okay, we're going to start this little organization here. Everybody wants to know how to do it, and we're happy to help.
So the education is really spreading the message of what you do and allowing other people to, take that and go to the next place wherever they live, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's very different. Housing regulations are very different all over the country, and funding is very different. So we're different than even Indiana or Wisconsin, right? So it's hard for someone to come in and replicate our exact housing model because the regulations are going to be different. But the same principles that we use in terms of, where do you purchase a home and what do you look for in a home and who are the people to talk to in your community when you want to start this process? Who's your central agency in your state that you need to be working with, and how are you working with them? So all of those principles are very similar. And so, and we have a model, even then, there are some other organizations now that are stepping up to the plate and helping out with housing because it's a very big issue and a very, very big need.
Oh, yeah.
But even our model is different than other organizations in the city.
How so?
Well, first of all, we own our own homes. So other organizations that are doing housing, the homes are either owned by parents. I think they're all owned by parents. And what we found was that when an organization owns the home, you have more regulations that are put on you from the state, right? So if you're a parent-owned home, you don't have the same amount of regulations. And in some ways, that's a really nice thing.
Sure.
But we have just found that it's more equitable in terms of, who can live there, right? That we're selecting our residents based on compatibility of the residents. We're very person-centered. Does that person want to live with us? Do our folks that live there now want to live with them? Are they a good fit? Are their families a good fit? And then the other piece is that if it's a parent-owned home, the parents are responsible for the maintenance. Sometimes the parents are responsible for staff. We handle all of that.
Right, it makes it much more seamless.
Right. And then we had a meeting recently with a group of parents that are interested in Libenu getting more involved with what they're doing. And they said, who's going to take care of these homes when we're not here? This is a full-time job for us. And it is. We get calls all the time. Oh, the light bulb, the toilet, the this, the that, the things that are in a home. But if you're a parent and you've finally gotten your child settled and now you're getting 25 phone calls a day.
That doesn't really mean settled at that point.
Right. And we also, we only take individuals who have this SILA funding. We try not to take someone with private funding. We'll help and we'll work with them.
Private funding being like a trust.
Oh, right, or that the parents are going to pay for it.
Oh, okay.
Because if you are privately paying for it, first of all, it's incredibly expensive, right?
Right.
So without the state funding, you're paying like Harvard tuition every single year for the rest of your child's life, maybe even more than that. But with the state funding, it offsets what we need to raise financially. It allows for equity in terms of anyone from any socioeconomic strata can be part of that. It's not exclusive for people that can afford it. And someone can afford to private pay now and then have a turn of fortune and not be able to private pay. And then what do you do with that? You're not going to put that child out.
And as you age, as the parent ages, then, the income decreases.
Right. And there are a lot of things. We work with parents. Part of our educational program is really to help parents think about how do I plan for the future? What do I need to do? Do I need a special needs trust and how do I set that up? Do I need an ABLE account, for example, which is a specific kind of account for individuals with disabilities? How do I do that? how do I navigate Social Security? How do I navigate Medicaid and the Medicaid waiver? There's a lot of...
You guys consult for that?
We do, and we have wonderful individuals that we refer people to. So, we're not attorneys, but we have attorneys that we work with who are terrific. This is what they do. So we try to really help people navigate this system. And with our respite program, we help our younger families navigate that system. And then because of my background and expertise, I can also help them navigate the school system, the IEP process. We're just there as a resource on top of
full
everything
service.
else. Yeah.
Yeah. I used to work for a real estate developer in Evanston here, and there was an organization that bought a bunch of condos in the buildings, and then they had like a somebody, like a community manager in one of the condos, and then people living within the buildings. But your model's a little bit different because it's a house. And do you think have you ever looked at the other model of having condos?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So we have 2 homes and we have 2 apartments. So our homes are pretty much home models, and that was what our families really wanted. Our apartments obviously have fewer individuals in those apartments, and we share staff between the 2 floors. We definitely have looked at that. I think that the key in determining what your model of housing is going to be is to be thinking about what your residents need. So we have been discussing the fact that down the road we know we're going to need married housing, right? Because our young men and women want to date. Some of them want to get married. For some of them, that's going to be an appropriate thing. How do you do that, right? You're not going to have a married couple living in a house with 6 other people. So a condo model for something like that would be great. A 6-flat model also could work. So I think that our approach to this, as I mentioned, is that we're very person-centered. We really take a look at who wants to live with us, what do they need, what are their strengths, what kind of supports do they need, and then we build the model around them, as opposed to trying to make someone fit into an existing model.
Do you have a lot of people on waiting lists?
Oh, yeah.
Huh?
We do. We have wait lists for housing. We have wait lists for respite. If we won the lottery tomorrow.
So it's all about the funding, really.
It's about the funding, but it also takes a long time to put a house together, right?
Yeah.
Because you have to think about a lot of considerations, and then you have to find the house. And we're looking for homes really that are in the heart of the community, because we work with the community, we work with rabbis, we work with our neighbors, because we want our men and women to be fully included and part of this community. So
you want them to be able to walk to synagogues and
right.
be,
Yeah, and they do. Mm-hmm. So one of our guys that lives on Mozart is a Packers fan. This is very contentious during football season. No, it's rough. It's really rough.
He should be immediately evicted.
So he's a Packers fan, and it gets pretty heated sometimes.
Yeah.
But he goes to 3 or 4 different shuls, and he knows, in each shul that he goes to, he knows the tunes, he knows the prayers, and they're quite different from shul to shul, and it's pretty amazing. And he's the gabbai in each of these shuls, like he's made himself the gabbai.
Really?
And I don't know how you would define gabbai, and he helps to lead the services. So in one of the synagogues that he went to, which is a very Hasidic synagogue, for his birthday, they made him a Packers birthday party.
Wow.
With a Packers cake and green and yellow everything. And so they're really part of the community. Someone is sitting Shiva, our guys are there to help, make a minyan. Our women go, for example, the synagogue that they go to, the sisterhood makes a lunch for them once a month. And nobody has to go to synagogue. Nobody is forced. This is your choice. But
sure.
For many of our young men and women, they're remarkably spiritual. And I've seen this a lot in individuals with developmental disabilities. And sometimes for me, when I have my own doubts and questions and crises, I talk to them, and it makes me feel more spiritual. It makes me feel more connected. So nobody is forced to do anything they don't want to do, but if they want to do it, we want to be able to facilitate that.
Yeah, and that's why they need to be there. Have you found there to be, some of the challenges being like getting the houses because of regulations of, having a group home?
So that's part of it.
Yeah.
Depending on where you're at, the Department of Human Services regulations, I believe, are 800 feet door to door, that you can't be closer than 800 feet. But Skokie, for example, is 1,000 feet property line to property line. So we were looking at a home that I just loved, and my friends of mine owned it, and my kids grew up at that home, and I said, that's our next home. That's got to be our next home. I think it was like 980 feet from another home.
Yeah.
So it didn't work out for us. And then depending on where you're at, you'll have fire department regulations. You'll have, township regulations. So that's complicated. And navigating those things, I think, are difficult, because you may find what you think is the perfect home and it won't work. And then once you do find that home, there's things that we look for when we're, trying to decide if a home is going to be appropriate or not. And gigantic bedrooms are not the things you need. You
need lots of bedrooms.
Yeah, you need lots of bedrooms, but they can be small. What you need is a lot of common space, right? Places where people can socialize and get away from each other. So that's a concern. And our policy is that everybody has their own bedroom, because, and I think many organizations share bedrooms. We have just found, the research says that if you have your own bedroom, it reduces the risk of abuse. So that's critically important for everybody.
Of course.
Our folks are so vulnerable. I don't want to get too sidetracked, but we put together a program that is we call it our Libenu Live Well program. And it has to do with health and safety and prevention of sexual abuse and nutrition and exercise. It's just a comprehensive program. Excuse me. And when I was researching for this program, the statistics are terrifying. So someone with a disability is 10 times more likely to be abused than someone without a disability. They are incredibly vulnerable. And as I thought about why this was, it occurred to me that when children with developmental disabilities are in school, we teach them to be compliant. We want them to be compliant. We work on behaviors. We work on social skills, and with an underlying theme of compliance. And we never teach them when to not be compliant.
Right, that's so important.
Right, and then they end up in a situation where they're vulnerable and they're easily influenced. And someone could be working in an office, and someone could say to them, I need you to come down and help me in the supply room, right? And they go down, and they don't recognize that there's a potential for abuse. Why would they? And then they're abused, and then this person would say, if you say something, you'll lose your job, right? They're terrified of losing their jobs. So that idea of when should you be compliant and when should you not be compliant, these are things that we're trying to work on and teach our folks to proactively recognize potentially dangerous situations and avoid them.
That must be, are there programs for education on this that have been tried and tested that you're trying to implement?
No, we're starting our own, actually.
Wow.
The programs that are...
this is a huge space of need. Oh, my God.
So the programs that are out there, for the most part, are teaching individuals with disabilities how to report when something happens, and teaching people who work with people with disabilities to recognize, report, and respond to. And that's critically important. But as I was doing my research on this program, and as we were putting this together, we really need to teach folks, before we get to the place where they have to respond to something, how to recognize and avoid a potentially dangerous situation. And I have not... if your listeners are out there and they know of something, they should please call me. But I haven't found anything in all the research that we've been doing, so that's what we've created, is these workshops and seminars in language that our folks can understand. And we don't want to frighten them, right?
Sure.
We don't want to create a situation where they don't want to go to work or they're scared here, but just an understanding of, if someone asks you something and you're not comfortable, how do you say no politely, right?
How do you report?
Yeah. But I want to get to the point before you have to report that
you want to avoid.
I want to avoid it.
Of course.
So this is what keeps me up at night. That's what I worry about.
Absolutely. But I mean, you talk about education and doing these types of programs. You were talking about, you were on a panel for Life Unexpected. And, you know, you do these different types of events to outreach to the public. Why is that also so important for you?
So it's important for me because it helps the community, right? And Libenu is all about answering critical unmet needs in the community. We started housing because there really weren't housing options that were there. We started respite because there really weren't respite programs during the week that could give these families a break. So when we see a critical unmet need, because we're a small, pretty nimble organization with this incredibly involved and engaged board, we see a problem, we figure it out pretty quickly, and we act on it pretty quickly. And that's how I like to work, and that's how the organization likes to work. But programs like Life Unexpected, which was sponsored by Daughters of Israel and I think it's Refuah 311.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the other program that was there. This was a panel of professionals and parents that spoke to over 150 women last night. And the series is about things that come up in your life that are basically unexpected. So they had one on mental health many years ago. I believe they had one on cancer. This was a program on disabilities. And what was so critical were really listening to these parents tell their stories. One mother talked about the fact that she was 23. This was her first child, and her child has some very severe disabilities. And the doctor comes in and says to her, your child's going to be a vegetable. Here's what's wrong, here's what's wrong, here's what's wrong. And her daughter's thriving now, doing pretty well. But it's been a challenge, and they have a lot of other children in the family. And I think for the community to hear their stories and to understand what they are going through, even if it's just a little bit of an understanding, like the tip of the iceberg, and to know what to do, what is helpful, what is not helpful, it's critically important. And it was so well received, and I think that it really did a service for the community. Mm-hmm. And that's why we're here.
Yeah, trying to help people out here. Yeah.
We do, and there's just so much that needs to be done, right? And as Carl Lamel used to say to me when I would say to him, Carl, what about this, what about that? He would say to me, Shana, the difference between education and residential is residential. It's life, right? So things that I think we just wouldn't ever have considered as kids are growing up. And one of the parents mentioned this yesterday, that it's very hard for parents who have children with disabilities to think about the future because you're so consumed with the now. And you go sometimes from crisis to crisis to crisis, and you're always on high alert, and you're always waiting for the next problem that you know is imminent and inevitable, right? So how do you plan for 5 or 10 years down the road? And I turned to her and I said, that's why we exist, because my job is to plan for 5 and 10 years down the road, because I recognize that you can't, right? But I know what's coming. I know that your child's going to need somewhere to live, that your child's going to need somewhere to work, that they're going to need to have friends in a community. I can't tell you how many people came up to me yesterday, and they have teenagers or adult children that are still living at home, and they said, we know that we have to work on this, but my here and now problem is that my child is so lonely, right? They have no friends. And they may not be a good fit for Yachad, for example, which we partner with Yachad on a number of things. And they do wonderful, wonderful work with adults with disabilities in the community and with some younger kids. But if you've got a child at home who is high enough functioning where they're not going to fit necessarily in a Yachad event, they don't need to have a group home. They may not even need to have something that we call intermittent SILA, where you're living pretty independently, but someone checks in on you X number of hours per week, which is another model that we're looking at now for those folks that need it. But we have a whole group of young adults who, for whatever reason, whether it's mental illness, whether it's mental illness and a developmental disability, are having trouble finding a place to live, holding down a job, and having friends. And there's just a lot that has to be done.
A lot of advocacy that needs to be done.
Yeah. and a lot of programming that needs to be done. These folks fall through the cracks all the time. And I think that we need to look at ways that we can provide a safety net for them and be able to help them also have full lives.
We do. How can people in the community help Libenu?
So, of course, financial support.
That always helps.
We're never going to say no to that. But I think that we have a lot of wonderful people in the community. And I'll tell you different ways that people have helped. So one of the things that we do is we have people who call and they volunteer and they want to do programs with us, right? So I think in a couple weeks we have this young lady who was just bat mitzvah. She's going to be coming and making bracelets, for example, with our ladies. We have people that come and bake. We have people that come and, teach a class in Judaic studies for our men. So we definitely can use volunteers in terms of that. The other thing that we always ask for is we get a lot of calls from congregations and groups that want to do a mitzvah project, and so they want to come out and do something for our residents. And what we ask them is to come out and do something with our residents, because our men and women want to be part of the community. So if someone's mitzvah project is they're going to go to a park and they're going to clean up a park, we want to be there with you doing that.
Right.
We don't want you to come do something for us. We want you to do something with us.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And where can people find Libenu online and social media?
So libenu.org is our website. We have a Facebook page. If you just type in Libenu, Libenu, you can find us on Facebook. We have Instagram. I leave that to the young people in the office.
Yeah, they
handle all the social media. Yeah,
that's helpful. Well, you're doing great work, and I really appreciate you coming on the show.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
It's a pleasure, and thank you everybody for listening, and take care. Hey everybody, thanks so much for listening to this latest episode of Inside the Skev. Hope you enjoyed it and learning about Libenu and what they do that's so critically important for the community. This episode was recorded prior to the pandemic really taking a hold here, but what they do is very important, and I just ask if you could support them, please do so, and all the organizations that have been on the show. Things have really changed for many of us, and everyone could use support if you can, and let's all pull together. And if you need any help with any of your real estate, if you have questions, maybe something's changed on your end and you want to have a private conversation, I'm available. Or if you're looking for an opportunity out there, I could also help you and talk a little bit about how things have changed and how you can sell real estate now where you can't really go out of your house so much. So happy to talk with you. I can be reached at aaron@skevinson.com or go to my website at skevinson.com. All the information's there. And I also have some great conversations I've had with people from the community on the COVID-19 page on how different organizations are adjusting and coping with what's going on. So please take a look at that. Stay well, stay healthy, and I look forward to having you listen to the next episode.